What began as a routine promotional appearance quickly turned tense when Mark Wahlberg sat down on the Today Show, smiling for the cameras while the audience expected light banter. Viewers later claimed there was a subtle shift in energy as the conversation moved away from his latest project and into more personal territory. The atmosphere, once relaxed, started to feel unusually tight, as if both sides sensed the discussion was drifting toward uncomfortable ground, setting the stage for a moment that would soon dominate online chatter. Hoda Kotb, known for her warm but direct interview style, gently steered the conversation toward Mark's demanding schedule and past career choices. At first, Mark responded calmly, offering practiced answers that suggested he'd handled tougher interviews before. But attentive viewers noticed his body language changing, his posture stiffening and his tone sharpening slightly, hinting that something about the questioning was striking a nerve he hadn't expected to be touched on live television. As the exchange continued, the questions reportedly became more pointed, focusing on how fame, discipline, and public criticism had shaped Mark's life. While none of it sounded overtly hostile, the cumulative effect seemed to weigh on him. He paused more often, choosing words carefully, and his trademark confident grin faded. The studio audience remained silent, sensing a shift from promotional chatter to a more confrontational, emotionally charged conversation. According to online discussions, the tension peaked when the topic turned toward past controversies and personal accountability. Mark's response, once measured, suddenly carried frustration. He emphasized growth, responsibility, and the idea that people should not be endlessly defined by their past. Though his words were controlled, the intensity in his voice suggested he felt cornered, as if the interview had crossed from curiosity into judgment. Hoda, maintaining professionalism, attempted to clarify her intent, framing the question as one many fans had asked. Still, the moment felt fragile. Mark leaned forward, speaking more forcefully, making it clear he wanted his perspective heard without interruption. The exchange, while brief, carried a rawness rarely seen on morning television, prompting viewers to wonder whether boundaries had quietly been crossed. Social media users later dissected every second, claiming Mark's frustration wasn't sudden but had been building. They pointed to earlier questions about balance, pressure, and expectations as subtle triggers. What some saw as honest journalism, others interpreted as persistent probing. This divide fueled debate about how much intensity is appropriate on a show designed to feel friendly and accessible to a broad audience. Mark reportedly emphasized that his work ethic and personal discipline were deeply personal topics. He spoke about family, faith, and routine as grounding forces, suggesting that casual speculation about them felt dismissive. His words were firm but not profane, expressing a clear desire to reclaim control of the conversation. The studio remained composed, yet the emotional temperature had unmistakably risen. Hoda responded with empathy, acknowledging the sensitivity of the subject while still standing by the importance of honest conversation. This balancing act, however, didn't immediately ease the tension. Mark's expression remained serious, and his answers grew shorter, signaling a clear shift from engagement to guarded restraint. Viewers later described the moment as uncomfortable but undeniably compelling. As the segment neared its end, producers reportedly attempted to steer things back toward lighter ground, yet the emotional residue lingered. Mark offered polite but clipped remarks, while Hoda closed with her trademark grace. To casual viewers, it may have seemed like a minor disagreement, but to those watching closely, it felt like a rare crack in the polished surface of daytime television. Within minutes, clips began circulating online, amplified by dramatic captions and speculative commentary. Headlines used words like ERUPTS and heated confrontation, intensifying perceptions of what actually occurred. Some fans defended Mark passionately, praising him for standing his ground, while others felt the exchange was overblown, arguing that difficult questions are part of a public figure's responsibility. Media analysts weighed in, noting how easily subtle tension can be magnified in the age of viral clips. A brief moment of defensiveness, when isolated and replayed, can appear far more explosive than it felt in real time. This incident became a textbook example of how context can be lost, reshaped by algorithms and audience expectations hungry for drama. Supporters of Hoda pointed out her long history of respectful interviews, suggesting there was no malicious intent behind her questions. They argued that her role involves asking what many viewers are curious about, even if those topics are uncomfortable. From this perspective, the moment was less a confrontation and more a collision of expectations between interviewer and guest. Mark's fans, however, emphasized the human side of celebrity. They argued that repeated references to the past can feel like a refusal to acknowledge growth. To them, his reaction wasn't anger but fatigue, a moment where years of public scrutiny surfaced in a single exchange. This interpretation reframed the incident as emotional honesty rather than hostility. The conversation soon expanded beyond the individuals involved, sparking debate about interview ethics and audience responsibility. Should morning shows remain light at all costs, or is there room for tougher conversations? And how should viewers interpret moments of discomfort without immediately labeling them as meltdowns or conflicts? These questions fueled ongoing discussions across platforms. Entertainment insiders suggested that the segment's impact was amplified precisely because such moments are rare on The Today Show. The program's reputation for warmth made the tension stand out, drawing more attention than it might have on a late-night or hard news format. Ironically, the show's friendly image may have heightened the sense of shock among viewers. In the days that followed, neither Mark nor Hoda publicly escalated the situation. This silence allowed speculation to fill the gap, with commentators projecting their own narratives onto the brief exchange. Some framed it as a clash of personalities, others as a misunderstanding shaped by live television's unpredictable nature. Experts in media psychology noted how audiences often crave authenticity, even when it feels uncomfortable. Moments like this resonate because they break the illusion of scripted perfection. Seeing a celebrity visibly challenged, and an interviewer navigating that reaction, reminds viewers that live television carries real emotional stakes. Despite the dramatic headlines, many agreed the interaction stopped short of outright conflict. There were no raised voices, no walk-offs, only a palpable shift in tone. Yet that subtlety didn't prevent it from becoming a trending topic, proving that modern audiences are highly attuned to emotional cues, even the quiet ones. The incident also highlighted the power imbalance inherent in interviews. Celebrities hold fame, but interviewers control the questions. When those roles clash, tension can emerge quickly. This dynamic, often invisible, briefly surfaced on screen, offering viewers a glimpse into the delicate negotiations happening in real time. Mark's career longevity was frequently mentioned in post-show analysis. Commentators noted that someone with decades in the spotlight may be especially sensitive to how narratives are framed. A single question can echo years of headlines, making even neutral inquiries feel loaded. This context helped some viewers better understand his reaction. Hoda's composure throughout the exchange earned praise from many quarters. Navigating a tense moment without escalating it is a skill honed over years of live broadcasting. Her ability to acknowledge discomfort while maintaining professionalism became a focal point for those analyzing the segment beyond the initial shock. As the viral cycle moved on, the story gradually lost momentum, replaced by the next trending clip. Yet for a brief period, it sparked meaningful discussion about empathy, accountability, and the pressures of public life. In that sense, the moment achieved something beyond entertainment, prompting reflection rather than just reaction. Some viewers even expressed appreciation for the exchange, calling it refreshingly real. They argued that sanitized interviews often feel disconnected from genuine human experience. Seeing tension handled respectfully, without theatrics, offered a reminder that disagreement doesn't have to devolve into chaos to be impactful. Critics of sensational media coverage pointed out how language like ERUPTS can distort reality. While Mark was firm and visibly frustrated, there was no explosive outburst. This exaggeration, they argued, feeds a culture that prioritizes clicks over nuance, shaping public perception in ways that rarely reflect the full truth. Over time, the incident became less about who was right or wrong and more about how moments are framed. A single exchange, stripped of context and replayed endlessly, can take on a life of its own. Understanding this process became part of the broader lesson many took from the situation. For aspiring journalists, the segment served as a case study in balance. Asking meaningful questions while respecting emotional boundaries is a constant challenge, especially on live TV. The exchange illustrated how even well-intentioned interviews can veer into discomfort, requiring quick judgment and adaptability. Fans of Mark continued to praise his emphasis on growth and self-discipline, interpreting his firmness as a refusal to be boxed onto outdated narratives. To them, the moment reinforced why he resonates with audiences who value resilience and reinvention, themes that have long defined his public image. Meanwhile, supporters of the Today Show highlighted the importance of honest dialogue. They argued that avoiding tough topics entirely risks reducing interviews to superficial promotions. From this angle, the segment represented an attempt, however imperfect, to engage with deeper questions. Ultimately, the exchange faded into the vast archive of live television moments that briefly capture public attention before dissolving. Yet its impact lingered in conversations about media responsibility, celebrity vulnerability, and the fine line between curiosity and confrontation. What remains is a reminder that live TV is unpredictable, shaped by human emotion as much as planning. In a few unscripted minutes, Mark Wahlberg and Hoda Kotb sparked debate, reflection, and dialogue, proving that sometimes the most talked about moments are not the loudest, but the most human. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, viewers continued revisiting the segment, replaying facial expressions and pauses as if they held hidden meanings. Comment sections filled with amateur body language analysis, each person convinced they spotted the exact second when the mood changed. This kind of scrutiny, common in viral moments, transformed a fleeting exchange into something that felt far more significant, giving the incident an afterlife that extended well beyond its original broadcast window. Entertainment bloggers speculated about behind-the-scenes reactions, wondering whether producers anticipated the tension or were caught off guard. While no official statements suggested chaos backstage, the curiosity itself reflected how audiences imagine live television as a controlled environment, forgetting that spontaneity can override even the most careful planning. This speculation added another layer to the story, blurring the line between verified events and imagined drama. Some longtime viewers of the show noted that moments like this challenged the perception of morning television as purely comforting. When real emotions surface, the format briefly shifts, reminding audiences that these programs are not immune to the complexities of real conversations. For a few minutes, the polished routine gives way to something more unpredictable, and that contrast can be both unsettling and strangely compelling. Mark's reaction also reopened discussions about the expectations placed on celebrities to constantly revisit their past. Many argued that while accountability matters, there is a point where repetition feels punitive rather than informative. This perspective resonated with viewers who see personal growth as an ongoing process, not a box to be checked repeatedly for public approval. Others countered that public figures benefit from public attention and must accept ongoing scrutiny as part of the trade-off. From this angle, difficult questions are not personal attacks but necessary components of transparency. The tension between these viewpoints played out across social platforms, reflecting broader cultural debates about forgiveness, memory, and responsibility. Media professors referenced the clip in discussions about framing, explaining how editing choices and captions influence audience interpretation. A slightly dramatic headline can transform a calm but firm response into an eruption in the public imagination. This educational angle helped some viewers step back and reconsider their initial reactions to the segment. The moment also highlighted how tone matters as much as content. Mark's words themselves were measured, but the firmness behind them carried emotional weight. This distinction reminded audiences that communication is not just about what is said, but how it is delivered, especially in high-pressure, live environments. Hoda's role drew renewed appreciation from viewers familiar with the demands of live interviewing. Balancing curiosity, empathy, and time constraints is no easy task. Her ability to keep the conversation moving without dismissing Mark's feelings demonstrated the tightrope walk interviewers performed daily, often unnoticed unless something goes slightly off script. As weeks passed, the clip became a reference point rather than a headline. People cited it in conversations about interview boundaries, using it as shorthand for moments when discussions feel just a bit too intense for their setting. In this way, the segment entered pop culture memory, not as a scandal, but as an example. Interestingly, the incident did not appear to harm either party's reputation in any lasting way. Mark continued his projects uninterrupted, and the Today Show maintained its audience and tone. This outcome suggested that while viral moments feel explosive in the moment, the real-world consequences are often far more muted. Some fans even felt the exchange humanized both individuals. Seeing Mark push back and Hoda adjust in real time reminded viewers that perfection is an illusion. These unscripted moments, though uncomfortable, can foster connection by revealing vulnerability beneath polished public personas. The conversation around the segment eventually shifted from blame to understanding. Many acknowledged that misunderstandings happen, especially under bright lights and strict time limits. This more charitable interpretation contrasted sharply with the initial wave of outrage-driven commentary that dominated early reactions. In hindsight, the incident served as a reminder of how quickly narratives form and solidify online. Early interpretations often shape long-term perceptions, even when later reflection offers more nuance. Recognizing this pattern encouraged some viewers to slow down before drawing conclusions from brief clips. For content creators and commentators, the segment underscored the power of framing. Choosing words like heated or tense can steer audience emotion in specific directions. This realization prompted calls for more responsible language, especially when describing moments that are open to interpretation. Ultimately, the exchange between Mark Wahlberg and Hoda Kotb became less about confrontation and more about conversation itself. It illustrated how real dialogue, with all its imperfections, can spark reflection and debate. In a media landscape often dominated by spectacle, this moment stood out not for its volume, but for its authenticity. As the weeks passed, some media outlets revisited the incident, framing it as an example of how celebrity interviews can reveal deeper truths about public figures. The focus shifted from the moment of tension itself to the underlying themes of privacy, fame, and the burden of public life. In doing so, they presented the exchange as a microcosm of the larger issues stars face when their every word and action is scrutinized under a magnifying glass. For many fans, the moment marked a turning point in how they viewed Mark Wahlberg. His reaction was interpreted not as a loss of composure but as a statement of self-respect. This shift in perspective made his passionate responses resonate even more with those who admired his ability to maintain his principles in the face of pressure. For them, the interview was a confirmation of the depth of his character, rather than a blemish on his public image. In contrast, some felt that Mark's frustration was a sign of someone who had grown weary of the constant questioning and scrutiny that comes with fame. This interpretation cast his response as a form of emotional exhaustion, a window into the cost of sustained public attention. The moment became a symbol of the personal toll celebrity can take, even on the most seasoned actors and public figures. One fascinating aspect of the fallout was the way fans of the Today Show rallied around Hoda Kotb. Many recognized her commitment to asking tough questions with kindness and integrity. Hoda's ability to maintain her poise during moments of tension only reinforced her reputation as a respected journalist who isn't afraid to challenge her guests, yet always does so with empathy. As a result, the incident sparked a larger conversation about the balance between honesty and respect in interviews. The line between respectful inquiry and unwarranted probing became a focal point, with some arguing that Hoda's approach was perfectly valid and others feeling that the questions crossed a line into discomfort. Regardless of where people stood, the incident highlighted how subjective the interpretation of such moments can be. The dynamic between Hoda and Mark also opened up a discussion about gender in interviews. Some viewers noted that female interviewers are often held to higher standards of emotional sensitivity, especially when they're dealing with male guests. This added another layer of complexity to the exchange, suggesting that the response to Hoda's questioning may have been influenced, at least in part, by gendered expectations about how women should behave in these situations. The emotional impact of the moment lingered for days in the media, serving as a reminder that public figures, regardless of their fame or success, are still human. This vulnerability, while often hidden behind public personas, surfaced briefly during the interview. It reminded audiences that celebrities, like everyone else, have emotional limits. For many viewers, this made Mark's reaction not just understandable but relatable. The aftermath of the segment also served as a case study in the evolution of celebrity interviews. Gone are the days when promotional appearances were simply opportunities to talk about upcoming projects. Today, they have become opportunities for deeper personal exploration. While this can lead to more meaningful conversations, it also opens the door for discomfort, as seen in this incident. Some critics of celebrity culture used the incident to point out how audiences often expect public figures to perform on demand. Whether it's an emotional response or a witty quip, celebrities are frequently put in positions where they have to offer something beyond the ordinary. This expectation creates an underlying tension that's easy to overlook until moments like these force it to the surface. As the debate continued, some viewers focused on the power dynamics involved in interviews. They argued that while celebrities have the platform to voice their opinions, interviewers also hold significant sway over how those opinions are received. In that context, Hoda's role was seen as one of a guide, attempting to navigate the conversation through tricky terrain. However, others felt she was too aggressive in pushing for a response, illustrating the delicate balancing act interviewers must perform. Mark's continued silence on the matter in the days following the interview only added fuel to the fire. In some ways, his refusal to engage with the growing controversy allowed the story to live on without his input. This strategic non-response is often seen in celebrity PR, where the best course of action is to let the public narrative run its course. For Mark, this might have been a conscious decision to let the dust settle without inflaming the situation further. Despite the tension, some fans took to social media to defend both parties, arguing that neither Mark nor Hoda were at fault. They suggested that the interview was simply a rare moment of honest emotion, which, when viewed in its entirety, shouldn't be criticized as much as it was. To them, the real takeaway was not about who won or lost the argument but about the rawness of the human experience being displayed on screen. Meanwhile, some entertainment journalists pointed out that the segment provided a textbook example of how easily a moment of tension can be spun into something bigger than it originally was. Headlines, memes, and tweets all took on a life of their own, adding layers of meaning to a conversation that, in hindsight, might have been more subdued than people realized. This phenomenon of viral amplification only further emphasized the power of digital media in shaping public perception. The controversy also highlighted how celebrity interviews are increasingly being shaped by audience expectations. What might have once been a simple promotional tour is now an arena where stars are expected to reveal personal truths, often at the risk of exposing themselves to criticism. This shift has changed the dynamics between interviewer and interviewee, making interactions more intense and sometimes more fraught. By the time the incident had faded from headlines, it had already sparked a deeper reflection on the nature of fame, the ethics of interviewing, and the complexity of public personas. Whether it was Mark's frustration or Hoda's probing questions, the exchange left an indelible mark on both of their careers, reminding the public that sometimes the most memorable moments are those that reveal the vulnerability of the people behind the celebrity masks. As the media cycle continued, there were subtle shifts in how interviews with celebrities were approached. Producers and journalists began to take note of how sensitive topics should be framed, ensuring that the tone remained respectful even when the questions were tough. This incident served as a reminder that interviews, particularly with high-profile figures, can have unintended emotional consequences if not handled with care. Fans of the Today Show pointed to Hoda Kotb's reaction as a prime example of journalistic professionalism. Despite the discomfort in the air, Hoda maintained her composure and allowed the conversation to unfold naturally, without escalating the tension. This was seen as a testament to her ability to balance probing questions with empathy, a skill that's often more difficult than it appears. On the other hand, critics of Mark Wahlberg's reaction argued that he should have expected such questions, given the nature of the show and the public's hunger for personal details. They suggested that celebrities, especially those with long careers, should be prepared to address sensitive issues as part of their ongoing media obligations. However, this viewpoint was quickly countered by those who believe that even celebrities deserve boundaries. For many, the incident became a broader conversation about the right to privacy. While public figures often share parts of their lives willingly, there's a growing sentiment that not everything should be up for discussion. Mark Wahlberg's frustrated response echoed a larger societal debate. How much should we know about a person, and at what point do we cross into intrusion? Media analysts also noted that moments like this can be pivotal in shaping the public's perception of a celebrity. The emotional outburst, if it can even be called that, was interpreted by some as a demonstration of strength and acknowledgement of human frailty beneath the tough exterior of a Hollywood actor. To others, it was seen as a misstep that undermined his image. Fans on social media immediately rallied behind Mark, expressing support for how he handled the situation. They appreciated his honesty, seeing it as a rare instance where a star wasn't afraid to show vulnerability. This side of him, they argued, made him more relatable and grounded. For those who have followed his career from his early days in music and acting, his response was seen as part of his journey towards self-realization and growth. Meanwhile, Hoda's role in the controversy sparked discussion about the role of women in media. Some commentators noted that her style of questioning could have been perceived as confrontational because she was a woman. There was a belief that female hosts are often held to higher standards when it comes to being gentle or soft, and any perceived abrasiveness can be criticized more harshly than it would be if a male host took the same approach. The discourse around the incident soon moved into broader discussions about celebrity culture in general. Some viewers questioned whether the public's insatiable thirst for personal information from celebrities had gone too far. They argued that the boundaries between public and private life should be more clearly defined, and that the public should respect the emotional limits of those who entertain them. On the flip side, others defended the need for public figures to answer difficult questions, particularly in an age where media is dominated by social platforms and constant engagement. They argued that celebrities are no longer just entertainers but public figures whose lives are intrinsically linked to the public's curiosity. For these critics, Mark's reaction demonstrated the growing tensions between celebrity and privacy in the modern age. For journalists and media personalities, this incident underscored the constant balancing act they face between being informative and respecting the emotional space of their guests. The fine line between being too probing and providing insight into a celebrity's life is often difficult to navigate. This incident was an example of how quickly that line can be crossed, and how easy it is for moments of discomfort to turn into viral sensations. As the weeks turned into months, the conversation moved away from the specifics of the interview and toward the general cultural implications. How does the public consume celebrity interviews, and what are the ethical considerations for journalists? These questions, sparked by the Wahlberg Kotb confrontation, continued to resonate in media and public discourse. In some circles, the incident was cited as an example of the changing nature of interviews on morning shows. While the Today Show has long been a space for light-hearted interactions, this moment showed that the demand for more candid, less scripted conversations is growing. There was a sense that audiences now expect more from interviews, a deeper, more genuine insights into the people behind the celebrity. As time passed, the intensity of the conversation subsided, but the underlying issues it raised about celebrity privacy, media ethics, and personal boundaries remained. The debate didn't just end with the interview itself but lingered as a reminder that even small moments can spark larger discussions about how we, as a society, relate to fame and the figures who occupy that space. Some celebrities began to weigh in on the controversy, offering their own perspectives on handling tough interviews. Many shared stories of their own uncomfortable moments, showing solidarity with Mark and reminding the public that fame does not mean a person forfeits their right to protect their emotional boundaries. These discussions help to humanize the ongoing conversation about what celebrities owe to the public and vice versa. Meanwhile, media outlets continued to cover the story in various ways, often revisiting it when other high-profile celebrity interviews took place. It became a reference point for how emotional exchanges can shift the tone of an interview and change its trajectory. The Wahlberg-Kotb exchange remained a case study for how moments of tension can quickly become emblematic of larger societal themes. The incident also had ripple effects in the entertainment industry, with publicists and managers advising their clients to be prepared for these types of probing questions. Some public figures, aware of how viral moments can shape their image, began to approach interviews with a heightened sense of caution, aware that every exchange could be scrutinized from multiple angles.